And we are live.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Christelle. And you are in a special secret location now.
I am in a
witness protection.
I'm
has
in.
Come and rehoused you.
You're obsessed with witness protection. I'm in a top secret location.
You're in a special studio bunker. That's what I've heard.
Well, you know what? I am in a top secret location. How are you, Tim?
I'm feeling fairly crap today, but I'll survive, I hope. If I run off in the middle of the show, it's because my stomach's not been great today. So
I'll do a monologue. I'll practice. Tim, it's funny because we don't really talk about this too much. I'm in America. I'm in Southern California, and you're in the UK. You're in London. And as we've had different discussions and talked about world events and even talked about cultural differences, we've had some fun discussions about different words that we use. Every once in a while, I'll say something and you'll be like, wait a minute. You'll say something and I'll have to clarify. Or
it's usually more of a British thing that Americans don't understand than the other way around. But on the other hand, I've been so, it's our country, we've been so bombarded with American media that we probably know most American terms for things, even if they're not. I mean, garbage.
That's true.
Rather than like rubbish.
Rubbish.
Trash isn't really it, but then trash. I'm not sure if trash might be an English word as well, but.
I don't know, but there's some fun words that I'm learning. For example, here's one. I say eggplant.
Yes.
You say something else.
I think that's artichoke, isn't it?
No.
Not artichoke. Well, you don't say.
We don't say. Hi, April. April says, "Hi, guys."
Oh.
Break. I'm also in a bunker right now. We're both in bunker.
I thought April was on the Zambezi River doing trying to find the source of the Zambezi. That was what I heard. All of this stuff about being in lockdown. She's actually adventuring.
April, help me if you're hanging out. Okay, so we're doing British English words for a minute because I'm learning a whole bunch. Eggplant I think it starts with C, like a courgette or something, or a
oh my gosh. Yeah. No, it's because I
what is the
well, I don't know what I know it's something that we call a sensible name and you not call eggplant because it looks like an egg or something.
Now I have to Google it.
I thought it was artichoke, but
what is? Do I say English word for
aubergine? It's an aubergine. I looked it up. It's an aubergine.
How do you spell that?
Aubergine. We use the French word for it. I mean, there's lots of cases like that where we use more French terms than Americans do, which is bizarre, given that like France actually had like a massive claim on the middle of the US for like years.
Yes.
But yeah, for whatever reason.
That's true.
Yeah.
What are some other words? Some other words are.
Well, let's go to Google. Sort of like
words. I am learning all kinds of differences between American English and UK English, and it's fun. It's like solving a mystery sometimes.
Right. So I'm reading an article from the Indy 100 Independent. A jumper.
A jumper is
what
a
would
sweater.
You say a jumper is?
A sweater.
We use one of the terms, but we use a jumper to mean something else as well.
Do you mean is a jumper a sweater?
Mm.
Yes. Okay.
It's not well, we would say somebody's a jumper if they jump off a bridge as well. But yeah, a jumper is and I could actually do with a jumper right now. I've been a bit cold, but
the UK
we do use sweater as well, but we say a jumper. Like jumper's just a sweater, basically.
Yeah.
So that was number 1 on this 25 list.
I mean, obviously talking to you and having a boyfriend from the UK, this is why I'm learning these terms. So April said the UK is more proper. That's true. And even in Southern California and San Diego, we tend to use a lot of slang. So do you guys call diapers a nappy, Tim?
Yes, we do. And in fact, I don't think anybody uses the term diapers in the UK.
Yeah,
one of those words where it's genuinely different. Like aubergine, actually, we wouldn't say egg when nobody says eggplant in the UK.
Aubergine. I know. I learned this. I was talking to my boyfriend about an eggplant, and we discovered that we use completely different terms. So, what are some other words?
How did the conversation get onto aubergines and eggplant?
I don't know. Food. I don't know. We were probably eating. One of us was eating an eggplant or.
Do you communicate by using a secret vegetable code language?
Probably. We were probably talking about something we were eating, and one of us didn't know what the other was saying, and probably asked, "What are you talking about? What are you eating?"
The next one on this website I've got on the side that I can't be put to share. Well, there's one that it's probably. Rubber means a pencil eraser in the UK, and I think it can mean other things in other languages.
Rubber?
Rubber. Yeah. Rubber is something you've got on the end of a pencil to erase. You call it an eraser.
We use eraser, yes. And there is something
but that's not the one. The one is actually one that's quite subtle in we say when we talk about the first floor, we talk about that meaning the ground floor is the one on the ground, and then the first floor is the first floor above that. Well, in the US, the first floor is what we call the ground floor.
Yep.
Which is quite confusing.
Okay, well, this has never come up. I've just learned something new.
Have you ever been to the UK or Europe?
No.
Have you ever left California?
I have been to Canada, and I've been to Mexico, and that's as far as I've gone outside the US. So
you have done all of North America then. So you've done one entire well, actually, I suppose you got all the Central American ones. Are they North America? I suppose they are.
Yeah. I've only been to Baja California, to be honest. I would love to go visit all of South America, and there's so much to visit there. I would love to go to Mexico City, and there's so much, to do and see down there, culturally, and just art and music. And I would like to go there.
Anyway,
we discovered. What are some
blinkers?
other?
What would you say blinkers are?
We say for blinkers, that's like a car when you're turning the.
We would call them indicators. We would say blinkers actually are on horses. So the things you put on horses to stop them looking from side to side are called blinkers.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know what you call blinkers in the US.
I think blinkers is like I click when I'm driving.
Yeah, we call them indicators. So that's
okay.
Yeah, a casket. Now, a casket is what we would call a coffin. And we would just say casket is just a box, basically. Though it says here a jewelry box, but I think it's just a box really for the UK.
We don't use that for jewelry box, as far as I know.
Another one is one where it's It's the confusable ones that are more funny. It's like fancy dress. What would you say fancy dress is? If you get an invite to your boyfriend's party in the UK and it says fancy dress, what would you wear?
Formal, like a formal dress or a black tie, or
no. If you went, well, you could claim you were James Bond or something, but fancy dress is what you guys call like party costume. Like you're dressing up as Superman or something. Fancy dress is basically costume, like dressing up as like funny outfits.
God. Do you know I have a fancy dress shop in the UK? the cart. So this, I'm having an epiphany. Oh, April's saying a cocktail dress. I just had an epiphany because there is a cartoonist in the UK that drew me a shop in the UK, and it's called A Fancy Dress Shop.
Yeah.
I am just now discovering what he means by this because of this conversation. This is why we're having this conversation.
Yeah. And we've got the Dunkin'.
Tim is here. Hi, Tim. That is funny. We've been having, without even realizing it, I did not know that that's what he drew for me.
Yeah. So you are somebody who thinks cosplays. So.
Oh my God! Right now. Hello from the unofficial for now Dunkin' brand ambassador. Welcome, Tim. That is really funny. I'm happy.
This is one what would you say peckish means?
Peckish.
Yeah. I've never heard it used in the American sense according to this 25 words.
I don't know.
Well, we would say peckish as in you're a bit peckish, a bit hungry. But according to this, it means irritable or angry in the US. So
peckish. And remember, across the states, we use different terms.
You weirdos, yes.
We can't even be on the same page.
What would you say a solicitor does?
Sell things.
Oh.
Door to door. No?
No, in the US, a solicitor's like a lawyer. So.
It's a lawyer. Thanks, Tim, for posting the.
It's like April's playing up.
Guy comments, but ignoring mine. As long as my name is still in the banner, you need to be you need to put her comments up here. April, do you hear this conversation? Tim, you're coming a little bit late. Tim Sohn, we're discussing the difference between British English and American English. And as you heard, I just had an epiphany. I was drawn by a British cartoonist. They created a fancy dress shop for me. And I just realized what that actually means. And I just realized why they keep changing how I describe it. I had no idea until right now. Weirdos. It's true. It's true.
This is an important one. Hopefully, if your boyfriend says that he's taken his pants off, then obviously that means something different from in the American thing.
I've had.
What do you think? What would you think a man, or well, I suppose actually it could be anybody, but what do you think pants means?
Pants are underwear, right? No,
yeah.
Pants are underwear.
So it's not trousers. What we would call trousers, or
you just
call anything vaguely on the bottom half pants.
Pants.
And it's a lot harder to get into people's pants in the UK than in the US.
So we do use the word trousers, but that would be more. We often use it more, at least I think. And I'm not the expert here, honestly. I'm from. I'm so scared to say anything wrong right now. We do use the word trousers, though.
This is another one of my bugbear ones. I'm skipping over. There's some that I like. Well, it's slang in the UK, and it's not really.
Okay.
But what would you say chips are?
Yes, I've had this conversation too. Okay, so chips are like the crispy potato thing, like crispy.
Is that supposed to be the English or American one, or bird speak?
You open the package. Open the package. You take the chip out.
We would call them crisps. So it's very underwhelming coming from the UK and going to the US and ordering chips and finding it's just a load of crisps, because we kind of eat crisps as like a casual sort of thing. So chips in the UK are basically fat French fries, like really large French fries.
I have had this conversation.
Nice and soggy, and they are a British delicacy. Fish and chips, especially when it's cooked properly. The trouble is, there's lots of knockoff kind of So they'll have like kebab restaurants and they would sell French fries as chips, but that's not really the right sort of thing.
This is one of the most important UK English and American English terms to get correct because this happens the most. Thanks, April. Bye.
Already.
She said, go. Keep having fun, you guys. So this is very important because literally sitting down at a restaurant, we could have an issue here. So crisps are what we call chips. What we call chips are in the UK are kind of like a French fry.
Yeah. Well, you probably have missed him because you'll be on the ground floor and he'll be on the first floor. Wait at the restaurants. So you'll say, I'm on the restaurant on the first floor.
I'm on the first floor. What are you talking about? No, I'm on the first floor.
I'm on the first floor, eating chips in my pants. And everybody's looking at me strange. I just don't know why.
This is why this is a very important conversation. Oh my gosh.
Anyway, that's used up most of. Oh yeah, of course, the fancy dress element.
The fancy dress shop. Tim, I cannot believe we just had this conversation. I just learned something completely new. I had no idea. So are you telling me fancy dress shop is like cosplay? Cosplay, is that how you say it?
Well, it's kind of like the company I used to work for like 18 years as a developer IT manager person. Every year they used to have like a charity day. They didn't do it all the years I was there, and you were allowed, all the revenue for the company went to charity that one day, and everybody was allowed to come in fancy dress. So like for 1 year we'd dress up as like gangsters. 1 year we'd dress up as like, it was themes of areas of people would have themes as teams they would come as. So yeah, fancy dress is basically costume kind of. It's like everything in English. It doesn't make any sense why it's called fancy dress because it's not really fancy as such. But that's what.
Okay. It makes sense. It's everything has changed. My whole life is different in my cartoon world with these cartoon people who drew this. Tim Son, breaking news.
Woohoo! Is he talking about us breaking news, or has he got Dunkin' Donuts on the line?
That would be incredible.
Yeah, and they could be just like, we realise the errors of our ways. We're going to give you a lifetime supply of donuts, which we know you don't want because you prefer the coffee.
I mean, really. Trying to envision gangsta Tim Lewis. Oh, yeah.
I might have some photos. I don't know. I'll probably keep them quiet.
I'm so glad we've had this conversation. My whole world has changed. What's behind your head today, Tim?
I was in a rush. So
have fun, and we are.
Hey.
All right. Are we going to do the quiz?
Well, I didn't really have time to prepare it properly. So I'm just going to ask you, the theme is, I've got on another tab, I've got Wikipedia, list of best-selling artists. And I'm just going to tell you, like, give you two artists, and you can tell me which one is the highest selling.
Okay.
And I suppose we'll have to leave it for, you'll have to be slow at answering the questions so that we can give the commenters some time. So who has sold more out of Rihanna and Queen?
Oh, can I say now or do I need to wait? Tim Son, are you going to help me with the answer?
Well, I think you need to. We need to. This is the only trouble with this format. It's better with the list format because then we can just have everybody involved in it. So this way, you've just got to keep them. We've got to keep talking long enough before you make your.
I mean, I think I know the answer. I feel like I know the answer, but.
Well, shall I ask you another one to think of while you're thinking of that?
But I can't say the answer.
You can say it. Okay, let's say the answer. No, clearly Tim's still he's still like on the phone to Duncan. So and I don't know who the other people are watching. So
I feel like the answer is Queen. I mean, it has to be Queen.
No.
It's Rihanna. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good for her.
That was one of the most surprising things about the list. Rihanna is actually in the
good
top.
for her.
She's number.
The movie, honestly.
She's number 7 in
Yay.
claim sales of 250 million, but actually, well, this is confusing. It's got claim sales of one column, and then it's got total certified sales 279 million. So, which is more than Queen, bizarrely.
Okay. Wow.
Do you want another one?
I do. This is interesting.
The Rolling Stones versus AC/DC.
Oh gosh. I mean, I want to say Rolling Stones.
You know enough about my thing that it's AC/DC. Not much difference. There's just like 3 million. There's a total available certified sales. So I think if you actually have lots of dodgy stuff from the 60s, where the Rolling Stones would probably be higher. But apparently AC/DC have actually sold more stuff than.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if like, was there a single track that set them over? Was there a song or is just lifetime?
Well, I know they don't like Thunderstruck and all those other ones, didn't they? And I'm trying to think of all the AC. I mean, AC/DC have actually got a really, really committed following. Like, well, I mean, obviously the Rolling Stones have, but and also I think there's a lot to do with like digital sales and people who buy the songs in more than one format. I suspect that's why Rihanna's doing well.
Oh, Kat said the Rolling Stones too. Hi, Kat. My illustrator is with us. He said the Rolling Stones too. I think it was AC/DC, right? It was
AC/DC.
Yeah, okay. I said the same thing, Kat.
All right. Who has sold more between Whitney Houston and Barbra Streisand?
Oh, wow. My goodness, 2 of my most favorite in the whole world. You know, for years I said Whitney sang the soundtrack to my life. Big fan. Like, oh my God.
We keep following you around at the time, like.
Hearts go. Oh, and they found. I shouldn't sing at all, but oh God, I love her. I'm going with Whitney because I love her to death, and she will always be my hero.
And she did. She's actually sold considerably more.
Okay. That's my girl. Love Whitney.
Yeah, she's
even her last 2 songs were so important to me. Really, really.
She sold like 50. Well, hang on. It's quite a big gap between. It's about 50 million more. She sold about a third more songs than Barbra Streisand. Okay.
And do
you want to carry on with this? Do you want to carry on with this?
Yeah, I just have so much to say about both of them. It's a lot. Those are 2 of my favorite singers of all times. And I could go on.
Okay. Well, we can go on we can come back to that. So
okay.
In a fight between Barbra Streisand and Whitney Houston, who would you be supporting?
They're not fighting, first of all. Those 2 are not fighting, but
well, all right, a sing-off then. Like a dance-off, I suppose.
I can't. Like, literally, I can't. All I will say is this. Whitney sang the soundtrack to my life forever. And even her last song, I Didn't Know My Own Strength, was so prolific at a time in my life that was powerful. But Barbra Streisand, I'll put her on repeat over and over and over. Love her songs. If I go on a road trip, Barbra Streisand all the way. So I can't put those 2 against each other. Can't happen. Nope. My 9 Enneagram refuses.
So, like, you want both of them to die then?
They're both winners.
Well, let's say you were on a lifeboat and you have Barbra Streisand at one end, you could pull up, and then you had
not doing it.
Whitney Houston at the other end. Which one would you pull up, or would you let them both?
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Damn, no.
Okay. So we'll go back to the list and ask you another question.
Let's do it. Those are like personal.
Okay. What about Taylor Swift versus Eminem?
Oh gosh. You know what? You know, Eminem's last album was insane. It was so good, so powerful. My goodness. Oh gosh, but I have a feeling it's Taylor Swift.
No, it's Eminem.
Oh,
This.
okay. Okay.
By about 20 million sales.
Okay.
It's, I think, like, given that Taylor Swift started 10 years after Eminem,
Okay.
I suspect she probably will overtake him eventually.
Okay.
Oh,
wow. Good. I mean,
what about Led Zeppelin versus Pink Floyd?
help. Kat, do you know Led Zeppelin versus Pink Floyd? I'm going with Led Zeppelin.
And that's right.
Okay.
They did. That's a surprising one to me.
Okay.
About 20 million sales as well.
Okay.
Let's find something obscure.
The UK. I mean,
This is. I think this is global sales.
Okay. I'm interested to know how some of these musicians do in the UK versus over here.
Well,
are you more likely to listen to Eminem or Taylor Swift?
Oh, Eminem. Well, I mean, Taylor Swift, actually, I mean, it's like, I do know a lot of Taylor Swift's, man, but she's nowhere near as big in the UK as she is in, like, that's true with all the country singers, actually.
Okay.
Their impact is, some of them have crossover, like Shania Twain and people like that, sort of cross over to the UK, but most of the country people are way bigger in the US than they are anywhere else in the world, really.
Okay.
I mean, I think, like, well, I can ask you, Garth Brooks versus, actually, yes, Soul quite a lot. Okay, Garth Brooks versus Celine Dion.
Celine Dion.
Yeah, I know. I kind of gave you that away, didn't I?
Well,
but again, that's, I mean, I'm sure if you look at US, I think US sales, Garth Brooks got phenomenal. He's like really high up. He's like sort of number 2 or 3 in the list, but on global sales, he's nowhere relatively, because he doesn't know, nobody's really buying his stuff in Europe or anywhere else.
Okay. Yeah, Celine Dion is global, and she's Canadian, I believe. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Does that, like, when discovering that somebody's Canadian, how does that affect your judgment of them?
I love the Canadians. I mean, I would actually love to move to Canada if they would have me.
Well, let's not be too hasty here. You've got to work your way up to it.
How far do I take this?
Where would you go in Canada? I mean, are you a Vancouver person or?
I've only been to Montreal and I loved it. But okay, the irony is I lived in Oregon and Minnesota, which means I was so close to the border, and I never even made it up to the border, which is ironic. But I would go anywhere in Canada. Have you been to Canada yet?
I've been to Toronto, but I haven't been anywhere else.
Where do you?
I mean, I think Montreal's got quite a different culture, being like bilingual.
Yeah.
When, as I discovered in Toronto, nobody speaks French in Toronto. But they have the worst like French kind of commentary, not commentary, but like things on the train network in Toronto. It kind of goes le train est la con, sort of. It's like it's like an English person pronouncing French. Okay. On the announcements on the trains
in Toronto,
which is the music.
Okay.
So I don't know why I remembered that, but it's kind of. I mean, my friend. I mean, if I was forced to live in another country where it was a different language, somewhere French speaking would be where I go. Not because I'm particularly good at French, but relatively, I'm a lot better at French than I am in any other language, because that's the one I did at school.
Okay.
So I think with enough. I think I've kind of, in the back of my mind, I've got enough French that I could get away eventually with being in in France or a French-speaking place, but like Spanish, I know basically hola and la cuenta. Isn't la cuenta for the bill? So I can say, and I think it's I can't even remember what beer is in Spanish. You know, all the essential words.
The essential words. Well, I mean, I'm very close to the border here, so often we pick up Spanish, and I actually wish I could speak it fluently. I really wish I would have learned it, and I still need to take that on.
Well, I mean, they say like, and well, you're never too old for this, but I think if you really wanted to learn it, some sort of immersion thing, literally go to somewhere, join the gangs, dress up as a gangster, and join the gangs in Mexico. And
I mean, I think everyone. I'm going to say something controversial. I'm just going to say it. I think everyone in America should know Spanish. We should pick it up and be able to speak it.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's move on to the next.
You want another one, do you? I'm kind of running out. Okay, the Bee Gees versus. Scroll up, scroll down. Pick Bruce Springsteen.
The Bee Gees and Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah. Who has sold more?
I'm going with Bruce Springsteen. And
you're right. He has sold quite a lot more than actually. He's about 40 million more than the Bee Gees. Just why is that, really? Though, I mean, the thing is, Bruce Springsteen actually had a lot of international appeal. But the Bee Gees were British. I think they were British band, mostly British anyway. So, yeah, I'm getting bored with the quiz.
He's had longevity. So, Kat said Pink. He must be a Pink fan. Pink. Oh,
it's actually P exclamation mark IN.
Oh,
it's not. Well, I mean, that's not what he put, but that's what Pink is. I think because there was some kind. I'm presuming it was some kind of trademark thing where she couldn't trademark Pink, but she could.
Oh, she could do exclamation mark. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that on a lot of her videos and things, but you can search for Pink, and it's like I think her symbol is P exclamation mark INK. I could be talking rubbish here, but that's what I've noticed on YouTube.
You could say anything. You know what? I wish you would have asked me about Prince and someone else, because I'm a big Prince fan.
All right, let me find him.
Rain, purple rain.
He might be down as Squiggle on here, though, because he's not known as Prince anymore.
Wait.
The artist formerly, is it Taff? The artist formerly known as Prince.
So I lived in Minnesota for 5 years, and that's where Prince was from. He was from Minnesota, so he was a big name there. I was saying Pink. Oh, he was answering Pink Floyd when he heard it was the opponent winning.
I was thinking like it didn't strike me. Well, I mean, I think Pink is actually quite like her music's quite appealing to most people. She's a bit sweary at times, but okay. So Prince versus Simon and Garfunkel.
I mean, I'm always going to say Prince. It has to be.
You'd be right.
Okay.
He sold 65.3 million, and they've sold 60.6 million.
Oh.
But there's quite a lot of people, like Eric Clapton has sold more than Prince, Britney Spears, Bon Jovi. So here's one for you: Beyonce or Coldplay?
Ooh. Oh man. I love Beyonce. I love Coldplay, but I'm thinking it might be Coldplay.
Let me go back and check and find out that it's Beyonce.
Okay.
And that's 97.5 million versus 94.7 million. So
they're close. They're close. Okay.
So you should now just have to list every US state capital backwards from the longest.
Absolutely not. Absolutely we've had a talk about this. That if I'm doing this, I need a question.
I was so tempted to just go with US state capitals, but then again, it's.
We talked about this. I need you to start listing the the last.
I mean, actually, state capitals are really hard. I mean, like, because you've got all sorts of weird ones, like that make no sense whatsoever. Like Chicago is not the state capital of Illinois, for example. That kind of thing.
Here's the thing: I learned my state capitals to songs. So Tallahassee, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Columbia. Oh shoot, I already missed it. Sacramento, California, Salem, Oregon, Olympia, Washington, Juneau, Alaska, Honolulu, Hawaii. That was way off key, but that's how I learned my.
Yeah, it's like these. You know what they call mnemonics, aren't they? It's like Richard of York gave battle in vain is the colours of the rainbow. So red, orange, Richard,
orange, yellow, green, purple.
Gave battle in vain. So that's violet, I think. Violet. It's like.
Tim, I need you to list the last 10 prime ministers of the United Kingdom.
Well, are we including Boris, are we?
Sure. Let's do Boris.
Boris Johnson. Theresa May.
Okay.
Gordon Brown.
Okay.
Tony Blair.
Okay.
John Major.
Okay.
Margaret Thatcher.
Okay.
James Callaghan. Wilson. I can't remember what his name. Somebody Wilson.
That's number 8.
Douglas Howe, I think.
Is that 9?
Oh, Douglas Hume. Sorry, Hume.
Okay.
Hume. And have I got that right? Did I miss somebody? Oh no, Ted Heath. Sorry, Ted Heath.
Is that 9?
And then Douglas Hume. That's 10, I think.
Oh, how long are your prime ministers? How long do they hold office? There's
no limit. They just have to keep winning elections, but only 2 of them have won 3 elections since the post-war period. They're quite easy. I mean, it's like 2 of those people I named have won 3 elections.
Okay. Was Tony Blair one of them?
Yeah.
So
you see, unlike in America, we have male and female leaders. So the other person was Margaret Thatcher. So we had a male and female leader.
So they could possibly win unlimited elections. I mean, you don't have term limits like America has term limits. So there's no. Okay.
Well, I mean, strictly speaking, it's different because you aren't directly electing the prime minister. I mean, in some ways, it's odd because you would say you're not directly electing the president in November. You're electing delegates who will then elect the president. Okay. But because you in the UK system, so we every 5 years ish, and recently every year, we have what's called a general election, and we elect an MP, and it's basically whoever gets the most votes in the local area constituency. And those MPs are typically for one of the big parties, or you can vote for any party, but usually it's Labour or Conservative. There is Liberal Democrats are kind of the third party. Sometimes they go up to 20%, sometimes they're down 10%. But recently they've been down at 10% again. So the party with the most number of seats, then their leader usually becomes the prime minister. So you're never ever directly voting for Tony Blair. And in effect, it was the last. Because Boris Johnson was elected by the Tory party membership and the MPs, he wasn't elected by the country. And then he chose to have an election last December, which he won, much to the chagrin of people who didn't like Brexit or don't like Brexit, like me. But that's that's the way the British system works. So, yeah, I mean, the American system, you elect delegates to elect the president, but these delegates don't hang around anywhere. They're not in the Senate or Congress. They're just electors. So it's the president who runs everything. So you are electing the president in effect. But we are electing representatives of parties, and the people with the most majority of like seats in Parliament, they pick their leader, and that's the person who runs it. So it's a different system in the US.
Yeah. How often is your election? Is it?
Well, it used to be that the Prime Minister could call it any time they liked. So they could say, like, I'm going to have an election now. But then in 2000, I missed the Prime Minister. I missed David Cameron now. Oh, yeah, I forgot about David Cameron. Anyway, when David Cameron was in coalition with the Liberal Democrats, they wrote, they part of the requirement for having a coalition, they wrote that there could only be an election every 5 years. So it was called the Fixed Term Parliament Act. So it's literally 5 years from now is when the next election will be. But the problem is, because the election in 2017 was so close, by the time we got to the end of last year, it was like Boris Johnson had a like -20 majority. Like whatever he wanted to do, he couldn't do anyway because he didn't have enough MPs. So they ended up basically having to have Baker vote of no confidence, which they colluded with the other parties to have, so that they could start a new. So I think that's going to be scrapped again. So I think it'll go back to the old way where, like, the Prime Minister can just pick when they want an election or some variant of that. But obviously, COVID is like, because Boris Johnson and those lot came in and they settled the Brexit question, like whichever way you wanted it to go, because they won the election based on Brexit. And then almost immediately we're in the COVID situation. So there's all of this like other stuff that's waiting to be resolved in the UK, which is being put on hold because of the COVID crisis. And the big one of them is the trade negotiations with the EU, which allegedly are going on, but sounds like a total shambles.
Why would a prime minister say, okay, I want an election this year?
Well, what they used to do was they used to be like looking at the polls and things. And sometimes rather than go the whole 5 years, in fact, like Mrs. Thatcher and Tony Blair did this all the time, they would do like 4 years. And then they look for a time when it's like, it's a nice middle of the summer, nice thing. The economy's doing well. We'll go and do an election then, rather than wait right until the end of the like 5 year limit and then find out that there's some sort of economic crisis or something along those lines. I mean, if Trump could vary when the election was, like bring it forward, like there's an argument he could have thought, oh, I can see the COVID thing coming. I'm just going to like move the election forward and get out of the way before we have the COVID crisis, if that makes sense. So yes, this is the vulgarity, not vulgarities, the vulgarity. There's a word there that I'm trying to come up. Vagaries, that's the word. Vagaries of the UK electoral system.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm learning new things all the time.
I think we've managed to lose everybody by talking about politics. So I'm
learning. Oh, I
forgot about David Cameron. I totally forgot about him. He was the Prime Minister who was elected in 2010 but he had to go in coalition. It's basically the only coalition really in modern UK history. So he was the leader of the Conservative Party and he went in coalition with the Liberal Democrats for 5 years. And by the reference points of the current realities, they were relatively good in coalition with each other. Yeah. But then, well, this is what I heard, and I don't know if this was true, that in the manifesto they put for the 2015 election, the Conservatives put that they were going to have a referendum on Europe just to try and shut like the right-wingers in their party, thinking that they were going to be returned with a narrow majority and possibly go back into like coalition with the Liberal Democrats, who are strongly pro-European party. And then surprisingly they won a majority, and it's like, oh, okay, so we've got to offer this referendum on Europe. And then they went and lost it. So it's interesting how events can just change on like these kind of casual things that people do without thinking about the consequences of what's going to happen years later. So anyway.
Well, that's a life lesson. Well, that's a life lesson, though, no matter what. I mean, we need to think of consequences forever. And it's time we start doing that, because every choice we make has a lasting consequence.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've mumbled about this in previous shows, but we have this idea that everything that everybody does, especially successful people, is like fantastic, and like we've got to copy, like, but whether Beyonce chooses to use one kind of toothpaste or another kind of toothpaste has absolutely no relevance to her level of success as a singer, for example. And that's true in all sorts of other. I mean, people can have the most terrible personal lives as like major celebrities, but because they're a fantastically talented actor or singer or whatever, that is why they're successful. So copy them as an actor, but don't copy their personal life. Like too often we got this kind of, we put people on these pedestals.
Absolutely.
And it's like most people, the decisions most people make about most things are like they just follow along. They're looking for the quickest answer, and to be honest, it's not worth worrying about what kind of toothpaste to use. A lot of the time, it's just go to toothpaste aisle, pull toothpaste. Oh, was that one cheap? Pull toothpaste off thing, put in cart. You could spend your entire life trying to test every single toothpaste out and finding out what the best one for you is, but that would be a waste of your time. And that's what most people do for everything. They just basically find something that's not terrible and doesn't upset them, and they stick to that. But the problem is that once you start getting to the political realm, people are sticking with things, and it's like, well, why are you doing that? Why? And it's because the human brain can only worry about a few things at a time. I mean, typically we tend to worry about totally pointless things, and then we let other things that we should be worrying about just go kind of astray. So,
well, I mean, here's the thing, Tim. I'm curious to know your ideas for this. For me, there's big questions and big universal questions, and that includes, who am I? What is my purpose? And where do I want to go?
Well, you're Christelle.
You know we're going to you. Tim.
Where do you want to go? Well, given you got
what is my purpose?
Boyfriend, you probably want to go and visit him in the north. So that's that answer correct.
What is my purpose and where do I want to go? And that can be ever evolving and ever changing. And of course,
well, I mean, do you feel that your purpose is predetermined outside of you? So do you feel that your unique set of talents and skills mean that you need to do one particular thing and you've just got to discover that? Or do you think there's an element of you choose what your purpose is and then you try your best to do that purpose as best as you can?
I'm leaning more towards the second. I can choose and discover and explore, and I can be an ever-evolving person who continues to want to learn and discover and explore and hopefully be better. What do you think? What is your answer to that?
I'd like to think it's the second. I think the truth is it's a mix of the two. It's always it's always good to say it depends, or it kind of, but I think I couldn't become a jockey, for example, because I'm 6'4" and quite large, and I'll probably kill the horse, and the horse would be like 15 yards behind all the other tiny jockey. So there are some things that you just, however passionate about them, you just can't do them.
Absolutely. Like I want to be a Broadway singer, and it's just not going to happen. Yeah. So yes, I mean, in my head.
So that you are limited in terms of what you could be successful or good at. But most people have a capacity to do at least 5 or 6 things to a reasonable level. And then I think there is an element of you just have to pick one.
Yeah.
Now, what, like, stepping away from yourself. So, and let's not say this is not your child or anything, but this is like, in a weird parallel universe, you are shown like 5 people at random, and you have to assess which one is most being faithful to their purpose in life. How do you assess that? How do you say this person is much more focused on what they should, they are making more use of their potential than this person?
Yeah. That's one of those things where I'd say, I have no idea. I don't know. And this is something I'm learning to say too, is it's more powerful to say, I don't know, than to pretend like we know. And it sounds so simple, but most answers, I don't know, and I keep needing to explore. And our purpose is based a lot of times on life experiences and what has happened to us. And I think it can change at all times. I mean, my past would lead me into a purpose of sharing hope with people. But maybe that could be the same for anyone, because we all have some sort of story. What do you think, Tim? What would be your answer to the question you asked me?
I never know the answers to questions I ask.
I know, we don't know. We're doing
how would I assess these 5 people? Well, I mean, it's sort of a cynical, maybe negative thing to say, but usually there will at least be 1 or 2 of them with severe problems that are holding them back. Either like they drink too much, they eat too much, they're in an abusive relationship. Like, there's lots of people who are held back by either their own circumstances, or the feeling that they're just not. I mean, I think that's one of the worst things in life, is when you have this feeling that you have potential and you've never done anything with that.
Yeah.
And too many people are limited. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm sure there are people who will watch this live stream who think that, oh, we can do a live stream, we can do that. And it's like, well, actually, anybody can do a live stream on Facebook. Anybody can do a show, really. I mean, you don't need, I mean, I've got equipment here, but you don't really need any equipment. You just need a laptop, possibly a microphone, but you don't even really need that. So, I mean, whether we're any good at this is a whole nother matter. I don't think we're terrible. And I think there's so many podcasts I see where people have got the idea that they need to do it for their business, that they need to do live streaming. And then it's like, well, they have no idea what the show format is going to be. And it's like just them trying to sell their stuff. And it's kind of saying, oh, I sell mugs. It's my mug. It's and it's like, well, this is not entertaining. This is not good in terms of so, you know, what was the point I was trying to make there? The point was, like, there are some people who should be doing live broadcasts because they are funny, interesting, exciting people, and they've got valid viewpoints on interesting topics. There are a load of people doing live broadcasts who shouldn't be doing it at all because they haven't got opinions on it. Like, they may be the best mug salesperson in the world, but they may be better doing a Facebook group talking about mug sales with other people who are interested in mug sales rather than doing it in a live show format. So yeah, there probably was a point there, but I've lost it. So.
Well, I'm always, it's always good to say I don't know, but it's always good to keep exploring. So my answer today, and whatever I think might be truth today, is going to be changing tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And what I thought I knew yesterday, I mean, at one point we thought the Earth was flat, and people were dying when they said that the Earth was round. I mean, the truth is always changing. We're always exploring.
Well,
I love that.
Allegedly, I've seen a lot of YouTube videos, so this must be true. But apparently, like, there's very rarely been anybody who's ever thought the world was flat. Bar in, like, before basically the sort of Egyptian times sort of thing, like ancient Egyptians. Because the Greeks, like were good enough at maths to work out that the world must be round by the nature of the curvature of the Earth and that kind of stuff. There's all sorts of like, and that knowledge was never actually lost. Even with like Columbus, his problem wasn't that he thought he was going to fall off the world. His problem was that he thought he could get to the Indies, but he thought the world was half the size. That they thought the world was half the size it was. They thought it was a small ball rather than a massive one. That's because their maths was dodgy. But apparently, yeah, it was never ever really. This was always like an urban myth that people thought the world was flat. Yeah. There's a lot, but this is one of the great problems with history, and I'm seeing it happening with the COVID crisis.
Yeah.
History, they say like history is written by the winners, and to some extent that's true with like when it comes to wars, but history is written by the people who write the history down in the most convincing and compelling way. Like apparently, again, this is YouTube, so live with big asterisks, but a large problem with the Western view of the Second World War is the fact that because of the Cold War, all of the Soviet sources were like unavailable for like 30 or 40 years. So, and also the fact that because like the US and Russia were kind of sort of semi-enemies, it was always downplayed the role of the Soviets in the war. But all of the books about the West, like the Eastern Front, were all written by the German generals, the ones who didn't get tried in Nuremberg. They all wrote books about the Eastern Front, and they became like what the knowledge of the Eastern Front was in the Second World War. But in reality, they exaggerated all sorts of things, and they were like there were millions more Russian soldiers than there were, and actually. Now people are going back and looking at the Soviet records, and it's kind of like, oh, it was much more balanced. There wasn't a massive, huge number of Russian soldiers. Russia had about a level number of soldiers with Germany, and it's very interesting how now people are reassessing history based on the fact that they've got access to all the Soviet archives as well as just these books which are written by the German generals who were trying to cover their arse, basically.
Well, and we're taught to read a certain version. And if there's anything I'm learning, once I get outside the version that I was taught to read, there's so much more to learn. And there's a zillion other versions out there. And we were just taught our own version of whatever that might be, whether it's history or culture or whatever it may be. And that's mind-blowing. And that would pertain to what you just said. Also science, we were taught whoever wrote the science down or the experiments down, the media is showing us a certain way. So we're only seeing that version versus what actually might be happening on the ground level. It's true. I mean, here's the thing. We all need to be willing to get outside our box, really, and be willing to read books that are not the version we were taught to read at all times.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is one of the big problems, and you see it with the right and the left on political thing, that people don't read other people's stuff, they don't watch other people's videos, they don't do things.
It's true.
And it's like, as far as I think there's always fundamentally, there's going to be a problem in that you've got some people who think everybody should be equal, and that's a very wonderful desire, and I see the benefit of that. But then there's also a group of people who think that people who put in the most effort and work the hardest should be paid more, which is kind of the right-wing viewpoint. And they're both kind of like, it's like, why should somebody who's working really hard in the fields every day get paid the same as somebody who's doing and both of those, so there's a balance between them. But like, you talk to some people on the left and they'll just play the equality thing, and you say some people on the right. And
I'm seeing Jennifer. She said, "Where's the nice headboard, Christelle? I need one." Jennifer, I'm not in my home city. I went on a little detour.
She's on witness protection.
Yes, Tim likes to say I'm on witness protection. Hey, speaking of Tim, I met with Jennifer yesterday for an hour, and we had a really good talk about all kinds of things. It was fun, and that's because you introduced all of us to to her, and I love what she's doing. So she helped me out with some things and answered some questions.
I presume this was online. She wasn't in LA somewhere.
No, she wasn't. No, this was by Zoom.
Zoom.
Listen, we can all be best friends across the world.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that is great about social media and the new, like, you don't have to be like, you can connect with people in a different continent or different society who have more in common with your values than necessarily where you're born or grew up or where you live.
You know what? 100%. I think conversations like we have, Tim, need to happen more often, in that we're on two different continents. I mean, we're in two different completely places, and those kind of conversations need to happen more often, whether we're right or wrong, or we're exploring, or we have no idea what the hell we're talking about. I just think it's so good to have conversations across the globe, so we can have a more broad worldview. It helps.
Yeah.
I've learned so much just in this lockdown, talking to people across the globe through Zoom and with you and with so many other people. I would like to see that happen more often, and I highly encourage it, and it's a blast. So
yeah. I mean, this is the thing. It's just basically being open to different people. I mean, that's the great thing about travel, really. I mean, the problem with travel is if you don't, travel's all about the people. It's meeting the people, really. It's not about necessarily visiting the monuments and doing the things. So that's interesting in itself. But it's going to a different place and realizing that people don't know what chips are, for example.
Or thinking that you're on the same page for months, and then you realize you've been using a completely different definition of the same word. I mean, that happens to me all the time.
Yeah, a fancy dress.
We discovered today. I didn't.
Well, it could be when you get invited to a fancy dress party when you're in like Hartlepool or wherever it is in the UK.
If someone had invited me in the UK to a fancy dress party, I would have shown up in a fancy, like what I consider a fancy dress, not a costume. So I'm glad we fixed this.
Well, I mean, you could have. I mean, if you'd been clever about it, you could have said like, "There's all sorts of people being in fancy." You could have said you were, I don't know, some character who's always in fancy dress. I mean, if you were a man, you could have said you were James Bond, but you could say you were like a Bond girl.
Yeah, this is a good example of always being aware and always being willing to ask for making sure we understand what each other are talking about. Being willing to ask the questions. That's a really good example of that. So I think it's 1:07, Tim. We're ready to sign off.
Yeah, I know that you turn into a pumpkin after 1 o'clock.
A pumpkin.
This is why I have to be careful not to play the wrong outro. I think I want to play the outro.
Bye, Kat. Bye, Tim. Bye, friends.
Bye.
And